Hi, my name's Dominic White, and if you're new to the podcast, I play Jory in our D&D game. I also edit Tales of the Brunch Club and write many of the episodes. I want to thank everyone for listening and ask you to stick around after the end of this episode for an announcement we're all pretty excited about. And now, here's Brian Messmer with this week's episode. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to episode 34 of the Rescued by Dragons fantasy podcast, Tales of the Brunch Club. My name is Brian Messmer, and I'm not only your storyteller, but the dungeon master behind the homebrew Dungeons & Dragons campaign this story is based on. Please join me as I tell the tale of how my players and the dice ruined and improved my perfectly laid plans. But first, a quick recap. In episode 33, the Brunch Club finally agreed to let Jory join their group. Diesa disguised him as an elderly halfling to help him hide from the pirates. Solania appeared in the room and gave them a new mission: find a wise and powerful hermit named Kalavar and convince him to return with them to help restore political balance to Elnor. Solania had a ship waiting for them to take them to the island home of the mysterious Kalavar. The ship was commanded by Captain Butler, who Alora recognized as the bartender who slipped Vorjon the note about restoring divine magic to Elnor while they were at Lady Tyrol's party. The journey started pleasantly, with Jory taking over the galley to make everyone waffles and pumpkin-spiced coffee. The smooth sailing was interrupted by a pair of water elementals that attacked the ship, killing one of the crew members before the Brunch Club, with the aid of Captain Butler, finished them off. And now, Episode 34, Saved by the Bunghole. The Brunch Club stood, shaken, on the deck of the Damsel. They were tense. The encounter with the water elementals was unwavering proof that open waters were rife with peril. Drusilla, in particular, looked pale and shaken by her unwelcome brush with death. Her hand lay on her chest where the elemental had struck her, swiftly knocking her unconscious during battle. The color was slowly returning to her cheeks, but she was weary. Before anyone could speak, Captain Butler emerged from his cabin, now dry and donning a modest white blouse. Both Diesa and Alora sighed, lamenting the fact that he no longer appeared salty, wet, and shirtless. "Any of you spellcasters able to patch me up?" Captain Butler grunted, eyeing his weary passengers. Drusilla nodded, and with a wave of her hand reduced Captain Butler's fresh wounds to faded scars. "Thank you, by the way," Drusilla said. "We'd have had a hard time beating those things without the help of you and your crew." Captain Butler nodded, looking out to sea. "Like I'd let a few armed puddles destroy my ship. They won't be coming back if they know what's good for 'em." Drusilla nodded and set to healing herself from the battle. Shortly after, she seemed to regain her composure, looking enlivened and rejuvenated. After several hours of uneventful travel, Salis noted the appearance of a small speck of land on the horizon, squinting her bright green eyes as she gazed into the distance. The island was small, with jagged rocks on the shore and what appeared to be a small mountain emerging from the center. It was lush with trees and plant life, slowly taking shape as the ship grew closer. "About time," Diesa said as she pushed herself up from a seated position, groaning. Looking overboard briefly, she scowled. "I've never much liked the ocean." "I think it's kind of neat," exclaimed Jory, popping up next to Diesa. He took a deep swig from his Boda bag. Yeah, it totally reminds me of that time I was captured by sailors and kept prisoner and abused and beaten by pirates, and I really wasn't sure I'd ever be free again. But other than that, I find it really peaceful and calming." Jory beamed at the open sea, taking in a deep breath of the crisp air. The group looked at him, and then exchanged glances with one another, stupefied by his unwavering positivity. Oblivious to his companions, Jory surveyed the horizon, his eyes locking on a speck soaring through the air. "And the nature! Look at that bird! From all the way over here, that thing must be enormous! Really, those eco-symptoms are just fascinating," he hiccuped. "I think you mean ecosystems," Alora sighed, looking in the direction of the flying creature. She paused, her stomach nodding. Guys. Alora trailed off, her eyes fixated. "I don't think that thing is a bird. The speck slowly grew larger and larger as the ship continued its course. Of course it's a bird, Diesa retorted. One of the crew members looked on beside her, nodding in agreement. I think that's a wyvern, Alora stated slowly, evaluating the long, barbed tail and two hind legs. Ah, for fuck's sake, Captain Butler exclaimed as he joined the group. You five are just magnets for disaster, aren't you? That's a wyvern, all right. Still exhausted from their encounter with the water elementals, the group debated the best course of action. Jory suggested the ship turn away and give them a chance to rest before returning under the cover of nightfall. Torn, they turned to Captain Butler for his thoughts. As much as I dislike the idea of fighting a wyvern today, I dislike the idea of encountering one tonight much more. His point was taken. Should the wyvern attack at night, the crew would be at a serious disadvantage. Finally reaching a consensus, the Brunch Club conceded to the fact that an immediate encounter may be their only option, despite still being exhausted from battle. Drusilla, Diesa, and Jory swiftly took positions on the deck of the ship, each brandishing crossbows. Captain Butler and his crew manned the cannons as the Brunch Club debated who should strike first against the rapidly approaching beast. They were interrupted by the sudden cry of, "Fire!" Two cannons boomed from inside the ship, causing it to rock and throw the group off balance. One of the well-aimed cannonballs hit the wyvern square on its scaled chest. It let loose a high-pitched shriek. It faltered, dropped several feet, then regained its composure. With a renewed, angry vigor, it pushed through the air toward the damsel. Another cannonball hissed through the air, striking the wyvern a second time. Recovering, the wyvern ascended higher, now a mere 50 meters from the ship. Drusilla, Diesa, and Jory steeled themselves with their crossbows. They held their aim steady, save for Jory, as they waited for the beast to descend upon the ship. Suddenly, a scream escaped from the wyvern. Its piercing howl cut through the air as it lost control of its movement and plummeted from the sky. It collided with the ocean and skipped across its surface. The water quickly closed around its lifeless corpse, enveloping it in a watery grave. Satisfied, Alora grinned to herself as she placed her phoenix arrow back into its quiver. "Nice shot, Alora!" Jory screamed, tossing his bow to the side. "We did it!" The ranger smiled coyly, looking toward her companions. "It was all right, I guess. At least the damsel is no longer in distress." Her joke was met only with groans. Laura glided back toward the group, tucking her bow and arrow away and allowing herself to smile with relief. Though she hadn't admitted it, she'd feared that the battle could have been the last for her and her companions. Brunch, anyone? Under the guidance of Captain Butler, the damsel eventually anchored offshore. The Brunch Club divided into 2 rowboats. Drusilla agreed to row the statue for Kalavar to the shore in one, and the remaining members of the Brunch Club piled into the other. Joy stood on the stern of the rowboat, slurring instructions to the group. "Stroke! Stroke!" he shouted, teetering as the small skiff navigated the crashing waves. The shoreline grew clearer as they made headway toward the island. Panting, they continued to dive their oars into the water, pushing steadily along. The party was about 60 feet from the shoreline when they heard the familiar sound of screeching from above pierce through the wind. 8 winged humanoid figures emerged from the mist descending towards the rowboat. "Oh my God!" Jory exclaimed, the first to locate the source of the screeching. "Harpies!" he shouted over the noise. "We'll skin you alive!" They could hear the harpies screeching, coupled with laughter more chilling than the cold winter mist. The harpies continued to taunt the group, and a particularly hideous harpy could be heard shouting, "You'll make a fine feast!" The harpies began to swirl above the Brunch Club like vultures, preparing to descend upon rotting corpses. Suddenly, their stream of insults stopped and was replaced by an enchanting song. One by one, the party members were lulled into submission, until Diesa was the only alert member of the party. "You've got to be kidding me!" Diesa screamed. Her comrades sat around her. They were dazed and did nothing besides rock slowly back and forth to the harpies' song, each oblivious to their surroundings. "You're just sitting there! This is pathetic," the dwarf huffed in frustration. "Alora, shoot them!" Diesa continued, pointing aggressively towards one of the nearby harpies. Instead of reacting to the plea, Alora just sat there, staring glassy-eyed at the harpy who'd charmed her. The winged predators quickly descended upon the group, launching a series of attacks against Diesa and Drusilla. Diesa screamed, and Drusilla jolted as if waking suddenly from a deep sleep. Now alert, Drusilla unsheathed her longsword and swung it aimlessly through the air in an unsuccessful attempt to dissuade her attackers. Meanwhile, Diesa attempted to waken her companions by brute force. "Wake up!" she shouted, swinging at Jory. Despite his charmed state, he nimbly avoided her series of desperate punches. Exasperated, she instead turned to Sallis, striking her across the face. Hardly reacting, Sallis continued to gaze out to the sea. Moments felt like a lifetime to Drusilla and Diesa, who were panting heavily, drenched in the cold mist. The group of harpies continued their overwhelming attack against them. They clawed at the dwarf and the elf as they attempted to ward off their attacks. One of the harpies swept down upon Drusilla, striking her across the chest. She fell, her vision going black. With just a statue beside her, the cleric began to bleed out into the rowboat. Diesa was the last member of the party standing. She grunted in frustration as the harpies descended around her. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of opponents, it wasn't long before Diesa also fell unconscious from the harpies' attacks. Death is a funny thing. As they died, the charmed members of the party felt only vaguely aware of the claws pressing into their flesh. One by one, each member of the Brunch Club, as the old adage goes, saw their lives flash before their eyes. Fading slowly, Diesa recalled images of being a small girl in the Cliffgate Mountains. Her father, the chieftain, scolded her for once again stealing from the kitchens. She recalled Adric Craghold, a member of the rival clan, and how her hand felt in his. She recollected the shame she felt being banished from her clan. In her final moments, Diesa wished for redemption. As Jory's skin was slowly picked apart, he couldn't help but wonder if his parents would be distraught over never hearing from their son again. His final thoughts wandered toward his heroes, the Brunch Club, and his long-lost friend Koira, who had taken him under her protection when he was kidnapped. As Alora's thoughts faded into darkness, she lamented the fact that she was about to die without the knowledge of who she really is. Lost memories flickered briefly through her consciousness, portraying the Obsidian Watch, vampires, the Feywild, and she spiraled into darkness. Drusilla's memories portrayed a more simple time. She was brought back to a beautiful city with golden spires, surrounded by a lush jungle paradise. She could see her friends and family surrounding her, and the air was filled with laughter and song. Sallis envisioned herself cozy, at home, with a book, aware that her father was out there somewhere, soon to return home. In the distance, she could hear gnome children giggling through the forest. The ease of the afternoon brought a smile to her face, and she felt safe and at home. For each member of the Brunch Club, everything soon faded to black. Suddenly, Sallis awoke. There was no light around her. Her eyes widened with terror when they adjusted to the darkness. The creature stared back at her. Its enormous eyes were larger than her body. She could hear the steady, deep breaths of the creature over the sounds of nearby water breaking against stone. With each exhale, a warm breeze seemed to creep over the gnome's skin and bright red hair. In the gloom, she couldn't make out the edges of the beast, but she knew it was big. Really big. "Do you make a habit of dying on people's doorsteps?" the creature asked. Sallis blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "Where am I? What are you?" Sallis asked. "I'm a dragon. A very old, very annoyed dragon." Its low voice rumbled throughout what appeared to be a dank, uninviting cave. It sounded inconvenienced. "Some harpies seem to have taken a liking to your group. They seemed hungry for gnome meat. 3 days ago now." "We've been here for 3 days? My friends!" Sallis exclaimed, panicking. "Your friends are fine," the dragon assured her, gesturing behind Salis. She turned. Her eyes were still adjusting to the darkness of the cave, but she could vaguely make out the shapes of her comrades lying upon the cavern floor. Turning back to the dragon, a realization struck her. "Wait, are you Kalavar?" she asked. "Yes," the dragon responded, without the intent to elaborate. "Wait, what? You're a dragon?" Not once had she or the other members of the Brunch Club considered the possibility that the object of their quest would be anything other than an old hermit living on a rock. "Clearly your recent mishap is clouding your cognitive abilities. Yes, as I explained, I am a dragon," Kalavar responded. "Do you want to hang out? Talk? Oh, wow, this is a lot to take in, Mr. Kalavar," Salis stammered, terrified and excited. He ignored her invitation. "Tell me, gnome, why are you here?" "We came here on behalf of your friend Solania. She wants you to lead the Five and take charge of Elnor," Salis said. She gestured toward the moonstone statue laying haphazardly to one side of the cave, explaining that it came from Solania as a symbol of change and goodwill. The dragon sighed, taking the statue into its long claws and relocating it among a massive pile of gold and jewels. He seemed to admire the statue and placed it prominently amongst his collection. After a pause, Salis gathered up the courage to ask, "So, my friends, are they gonna make it?" Kalavar nodded slowly, and Salis turned to her companions, who lay scattered across the floor of the cave. To her surprise, Captain Butler lay amongst them, his chest slowly rising and falling. "You should get some more rest," Kalavar encouraged, eyeing the brave gnome. Salis nodded, realizing how exhausted she truly was. She lay back down, resting her head on her tiny arms, and drifted back to sleep. "What the... Guys!" Jory exclaimed the next morning, jolting up from his sleep. "You are so shrill. Can you just shut up a minute? My head is killing me," Diesa exclaimed, covering her ears as she lay in the fetal position. "Is this the afterlife?" Drusilla moaned, as one by one, each member of the Brunch Club awoke from their sleep. "Guys, I don't know when he's gonna be back, so I'm just gonna say it," Salis blurted. "Kalavar is a friggin' dragon. I woke up, we talked, it was weird, I think we all died, but he saved us?" The group stared at Salis, each processing the fact that they had perished. Captain Butler shook his head. "I saw you muscleheads getting your asses handed to you. You were definitely dead, or close to it." The group agreed that, while waking from certain death in a cave with the dragon may be horrifying, there had been ample opportunity for them to become dinner in the prior 3 days. At the very least, it seemed Kalavar would not harm them. "Look, guys, we can talk about this more later, but I told Kalavar about our quest. He didn't sound entirely convinced about his return to Elnor." The Brunch Club processed their unfamiliar surroundings, examining the dank cave and the massive pile of treasure that lined the wall. Kalavar soon returned, landing with a loud thud onto the floor of the cave. Jory stood upright, and in a panic he recited, "Solania has everything on her end complete. The lawfulness of Elnor has been crumbling. She humbly asks your assistance in setting everything right." With his statement out of the way, Jory suddenly fainted, a small thud reverberating through the cave as he hit the solid rock floor beneath him. It took Jory time to recover, and after waking he continuously shifted his gaze toward the dragon and away again. Kalavar presented Jory with fish eggs and seaweeds, suggesting that he distract himself by providing nourishment for his friends. At dinner, Kalavar presented a wooden barrel to the Brunch Club, explaining that he has no use for drink. The party examined the barrel, debating the best way to reveal its content. Eventually, they resolved to open the bunghole and give the contents a sniff. To their delight, they identified it as fine, well-aged whiskey. Drusilla portioned the whiskey into small shells they gathered from the floor of the cave. Once each member of the party had their drinks in hands, she raised hers. "To our lives," she stated, tossing the liquid back. "To our lives," the group responded. As the group sipped their whiskey, Kalavar inquired of their plans. "Well, we're hoping to bring you back to Elnor," Salus responded, eyeing the dragon. Kalavar sighed, shifting. I think I would like to return to my slumber. Oh, hell no, Diesa responded, grounding herself. There is no way we came this far just to wake you up and lull you back to sleep. I'll be damned if we came this way for nothing. Her words rang sharply across the cave. Drusilla gently rested a hand on her friend's shoulder to calm her before speaking up herself. Her voice trembled at first, but Drusilla slowly gained confidence as she addressed the ancient dragon. We lost our friend, a dragonborn, who would have gladly died a second time to see peace restored to Elnor. We accepted this quest in his honor, and we urge you to reconsider. People are being subjugated and unjustly punished, and you have the power to shape the way of life in Elnor and to guide it back to being something to be proud of. Please, we urge you to reconsider and to see the opportunity for good that lies ahead of you. Kalavar gazed at Drusilla, silent. Without faltering, she continued, If you have the opportunity to make this messed up world a better place and you pass that up, then... She faltered briefly as she remembered she was more or less scolding an ancient dragon. Then you aren't the leader that Solani would have us believe. The dragon sighed. Elnor has the potential to thrive under just rule, but it is festering under corruption. Perhaps I should just burn it to the ground and start anew, Kalavar mused. Salus looked at the dragon. But not everyone is corrupt. We need to believe there's a better path for the city without burning it to the ground. Solania believes that you can hold the five accountable and bring justice to Elnor. You make a convincing point, the dragon responded, surveying the group. I do appreciate that you all gave your lives to deliver this message. Well, that wasn't exactly Plan A, Jory muttered into his shell after refilling it with whiskey. Kalavar breathed steadily. He seemed to be weighing his options. If Elnor is as you say it is, and Solania is ready, I will do my best to make right of it. He turned to face Alora. You've been awfully quiet. Do you have anything to add? Laura stared at the dragon, unfazed by his enormity. No, she stated. I think that just about covers it. Wait, Salus paused. Everyone turned to her. Look, Alora's been having some issues with her memory, like she lost it, and she just has no idea who she is or where she came from, and you seem powerful. So, do you know anything about memory restoration? The dragon paused. I haven't much experience in the art of restoring memory, but I might be able to point you in the direction of those who can assist you. Do continue, Alora implored. There's a shaman named Andar Stormwinds in northern Halstein that may be able to help you with your memory loss. To the west of Jazan, there's also Amika Lacroix, and to the south, Diera Astorio. They're all powerful in their own right, and while I make no guarantees, they may be able to help restore you. Laura sat silent for a moment. Fear and excitement filled her, though outwardly she remained stoic. The prospect of discovering her identity both thrilled and terrified her. The silence in the cave was thick as the party reflected on the new information, but after a few moments, Diesa could no longer help herself. You seem like you enjoy the finer things in life, she stated, gesturing at the hoarded gold and treasure surrounding the party. We've heard of the lost treasure of Bon Lodir. Do you know if there's any merit to the legend of his treasures? The dragon eyed Diesa. I knew him, he responded. A very stubborn dwarf, though he was a very successful merchant and weaponsmith of his time. If material wealth is what you seek, that's not a bad place to start. It's a means to an end, Diesa responded. The group continued to probe the dragon for more information regarding their histories and travels, but it seemed like they had exhausted his wealth of relevant knowledge. Finally, Drusilla asked the one question the entire party had feared bringing up. Look, I don't know if this is offensive, but if you're heading back to Elnor, can we hitch a ride? For the first time, the dragon seemed to laugh. I was going to suggest it. Awesome, Jory exclaimed, thrusting his fist into the air. And, Kalavar continued, I'd like to offer you a favor. You risked everything to deliver this message, and a favor from a dragon is one of the most valuable gifts you can receive. All I ask is that you use it wisely and at the right time. Come dawn the next day, Kalavar's voice reverberated throughout the cave. Wake up! It's morning, he boomed, abruptly startling the party out of their slumber. I have one last gift for you, he said. For helping me realize where I am needed, the dragon pointed his massive claw toward a set of fine, enchanted leather armor that had been separated from the pile of treasure. The party unanimously agreed that Diesa should don the armor. Kalavar told the party it was time to leave. They tentatively climbed up on top of the bronze dragon's enormous back. His massive wings propelled them rapidly higher and higher. As they ascended into the air, they saw the remains of harpies scattered across the beach. Within the hour, Elnor emerged before them. With power and grace, Kalavar landed atop the city's famed library. His massive talons wrapped around the crystal spire and dug into its translucent stone surface. The impact of the mighty bronze dragon's landing echoed off buildings throughout the crystal district. The echoes were followed by a deafening roar. The air around the party crackled with electricity as Kalavar unleashed an arc of lightning into the early morning sky, announcing his arrival to all of Elnor. Our tale will continue in episode 35. Episode 34 was written by Bethany Powers and myself, Brian Messmer. The story is based upon a homebrew Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Additional role-playing contributions to the story by Bethany Powers, who plays Diesa, J.P. Black, who plays Drusilla, Liz Raychard, who plays Alora, Anna Flemke, who plays Salis, and Dominic White, who plays Jory. Ambience and effects used with permission by Michael Gelfi. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help us out by sharing it with your friends. We really appreciate it. More information about Rescued by Dragons and ways to support this podcast can be found at rescuedbydragons.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Rescued by Dragons, on Twitter at Rescue Dragons, and on YouTube under Rescued by Dragons. Thank you for listening, and please join me next week to see what my players' choices and the roll of the dice have in store.
Thank you for sticking around. Before the announcement, I need to give you some quick history. We started writing Tales of the Brunch Club almost a year into our campaign. We were writing from show notes and memory, but trying to remember what had happened during a game over 30 sessions ago was a bit daunting. So we started recording them for future reference. Well, now we are caught up to those recorded sessions, and as you might have guessed already, we're going to start posting them as bonus episodes. They will be available each Thursday after their corresponding Tales of the Brunch Club fiction episodes are published. Some of you may be thinking, oh god, not another live play RPG podcast. And I get it. We were nervous about posting them too. But we think what sets these apart is you'll be listening to friends play D&D for nothing but the sheer joy of playing, and not for the sake of creating content. Not that there's anything wrong with that. When we first started Rescued by Dragons, we promised each other that our main priority was making sure we had fun, and not to let the podcast affect how we approached the game. There's tangents, booze, lots of cussing, bad jokes, inappropriate remarks, talking over each other, poor decisions galore, plenty of laughter, and lots of people forgetting which dice to use when. In short, it's your typical Dungeons & Dragons night. We also think it's interesting to see how an unscripted game, determined by the roll of some dice, gets translated into fantasy fiction. But we're kinda nerdy that way. So, join our merry band of role players every Thursday to hear the fun behind the fiction. Here's a short preview. We hope you'll like it and give us a listen.
This. And he picks up a barrel and brings it over and puts it down. He's like, that's something. Someone gave that to me. I don't remember what it is. It was a while ago.
I think we should.
Let's smell it.
You don't mind if we.
Can Joey investigate it to see if he knows what it is?
Doesn't bother me.
He doesn't know what it is.
It's a barrel.
Barrel.
One of you probably has a. This is probably tap somewhere.
I was gonna say, like, Jason could find like a narrow rock and just kind of hammer it into
Yeah.
the side.
I do have wood carver's tools. That could work,
Excellent.
right?
You probably got something.
I mean,
to-
if it's a
chisel it,
cask of
forget
some sort,
them.
it probably has. I believe this is the actual term. A
Bung.
bunghole.
Yes, it has a bung.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
could unplug that and
Yes.
actually
Yep.
smell
You
what's
could
inside.
unplug and smell the bunghole.
Alright.
Again.
yeah.
Delicious.
So we do that.
It's whiskey.
Yes.
Fuck yes.
Yes.
That'll
warm
us
Ladies.
up, right? Enjoy. You think
And
we should
Captain
partake
Butler.
heavily at this
And
point?
Captain Butler.
And Captain Butler. I think we get a little loaded and that'll make us right as
Are there any of those like spirally shaped shells that you kind of
Oh, like a conch
Like,
shell. We
yeah.
can use as a
You can make an investigation check.
kind of
wanna drink
investigation
that.
check for some conch shells or
Yeah.
like a little sippy shell? 13 plus.
sippy shells.
You find some spiral shells. You're not sure if they're conch shells, but they're something.
They
I'm gonna
hold
put
liquid.
some drank in it.
Okay. It's a little salty, but
I love salt.
Adds to the flavor, you know, the depth. It's amazing.
Kalavar.
We all take some whiskey.
Aged whiskey.
And then
little
some more
hint of
whiskey.
seaweed.
This was
Jory actually turns around, looks at Kalavar, and says, "To Kalavar, our savior, and the savior of Elnor!" And downs the glass.
It's a shell.
Downs the shell.
Kalavar's
To Kalavar, thank you for saving us. We were
Yeah.
gone without you. Thank you.
Real.
We know
Thank
you
you.
saved us.
So you're planning on sticking around very long?